I still remember how the light filtered through the stained glass that afternoon, casting prismatic shadows across James Hollander's mahogany casket. The funeral home smelled of lilies and that peculiar antiseptic undertone that fails to mask death. Funny how some details burn themselves into your memory while others fade. I remember the exact shade of blue of my dress, chosen carefully to be respectful but not severe. I remember the weight of James's leather portfolio in my hands, worn at the corners from 25 years of board meetings, business trips, and late nights at the office. What I don't remember is breathing. Not after I found the note. My name is Rachel Avery. For 14 years, I was the executive assistant to James Hollander, CEO and founder of Hollander & Company, logistics empire headquartered in downtown Nashville that employed over 15,000 people across 37 states. But that title, executive assistant, never captured what we were to each other. James was my mentor, my champion, the father I never had, and now he was gone. Or so I thought. The memorial service was exactly as James would have wanted it. Dignified, understated, efficient. No drawn-out eulogies, no theatrical displays of grief, just respect. The board members sat in the front row, their expressions appropriately somber. Daniel Cross, James's 34-year-old protege and now interim CEO, kept dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I had prepared the funeral itinerary that morning and slipped it into James's signature leather portfolio. A symbolic gesture. James never went anywhere without that portfolio. It seemed wrong that he should make this final journey without it. Beautiful service, whispered Doris Miller, head of HR and my closest friend at the company, as we stood in the receiving line afterward. Her eyes were genuinely red-rimmed. James would have approved. I nodded, not trusting my voice. 3 days had passed since the news of his accident. A fall at his estate, they said. No autopsy. Private funeral. The board cited privacy concerns and respecting James's wishes. It all happened so quickly. I'm going to get some air, I told Doris, feeling suddenly claustrophobic among the murmuring executives and their polite, practiced condolences. I slipped away to a quiet corner of the memorial hall. That's when I remembered the portfolio. I'd left it near the guest book, and something pulled me back to retrieve it. Maybe it was sentimentality. Maybe it was something else. Some unconscious part of me already sensing that things weren't right. The portfolio lay exactly where I'd placed it, its burgundy leather reflecting the late afternoon sun. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight, and absently flipped. It opened. That's when I saw it. A crisp, white piece of paper, folded once, tucked precisely between the pages of the eulogy I had written. Paper I hadn't put there. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded it. 5 words, typed in plain black font. He didn't die. He's alive. The air left my lungs. The sounds of the funeral receded to a distant hum. I looked up sharply, scanning the room, searching for… what? A sign? A face? Someone watching my reaction? The note had to be a cruel joke. James was gone. There was a funeral, a death certificate, an obituary in the Wall Street Journal. I refolded the paper and slipped it into my purse, my mind racing. Who would do this? Why? As I turned to leave, an elderly man in a navy blue cap brushed past me. I didn't recognize him from the company. He moved with purpose despite his age, and as he passed, he leaned in close. His breath smelled of coffee and cigarettes as he whispered words that made my blood run cold. The entire board is lying. Be careful. Before I could react, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me frozen in place, the leather portfolio clutched to my chest like a shield. I looked toward the front of the room, where Daniel Cross was speaking quietly to the other board members. Vincent Reed, the silver-haired CFO, Margaret Lowe, head of operations, Thomas Parker, chief strategist, and Elise Chen, legal counsel. They were all nodding, heads bent together like conspirators. A memory surfaced. James, 3 months earlier, his usually steady hands trembling slightly as he signed documents, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Rachel, if anything happens to me, don't trust the board, especially Daniel Cross. Promise me. I had dismissed it as stress, maybe early signs of the health problems he'd been so private about. But now… Rachel, are you okay? Doris appeared at my side, her brow furrowed with concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. The irony of her words was not lost on me. I'm fine, I lied. Just overwhelmed. She squeezed my arm. I know. It doesn't seem real. No, I agreed, watching Daniel Cross laugh softly at something Elise Chen whispered in his ear. It doesn't. As we filed out of the memorial hall, I felt eyes on my back. When I turned, Daniel was watching me, his expression unreadable. He nodded once, a gesture that might have been respectful, under different circumstances. Now it felt like a warning. I nodded back, the note burning in my purse, the old man's whisper echoing in my ears. James had once told me, "In business, Rachel, the truth is rarely comfortable and never simple." I hadn't fully understood what he meant until that moment. Walking to my car, I made a decision. If there was even the slightest chance that James Hollander was alive, that his death was something orchestrated rather than accidental, I would find out. I owed him that much. What I didn't realize then was how dangerous that decision would be, or how deep the conspiracy went, or that in less than 24 hours, someone would break into my apartment, searching for the very note now hidden in my purse. The game had begun, and the stakes were life and, death. The morning after the funeral dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, the note and the old man's warning replaying in my mind like a broken record. Around 3 a.m., I'd finally given up and spread everything I knew about James's death across my kitchen table. The facts were sparse. 3 days ago, James had allegedly fallen down the stairs at his estate. No witnesses. His housekeeper found him the next morning. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was already gone. Heart failure following trauma, according to the death certificate signed by Dr. Marcus Elliott, a name I didn't recognize as James's physician. Private funeral, no autopsy, board takes control, and Daniel Cross, the golden boy, steps into the role of interim CEO. I stared at my coffee, watching steam curl into the air. James's voice echoed in my memory. Don't trust the board, especially Daniel Cross. I'd worked at Hollander & Co. for 14 years, starting as a temp in the executive pool. I was 32, recently divorced, and desperately trying to rebuild my life when James first noticed me. I'd reorganized the chaotic filing system in the executive suite during my first week. Nothing dramatic, just basic efficiency that apparently no one had thought to implement before. James called me into his office on Friday afternoon. I was sure I was being fired. Instead, he said, "You fixed what 3 overpaid consultants couldn't figure out. How would you like to be my assistant?" Just like that, my life changed. James was demanding but fair, brilliant but grounded. He built Hollander & Co. from a 3-person logistics operation into a multinational corporation, but he still remembered the name of every maintenance worker in the building. He was tough in negotiations but genuinely kind to those who worked for him. After my divorce, when I was drowning in debt and about to lose my house, James gave me time off and a bonus for exceptional service. I later discovered he'd quietly paid off the balance of my mortgage. He never mentioned it, and neither did I. That was our way. Over the years, I became his right hand. I knew his schedule, his preferences, his moods. I could predict what he needed before he asked. We developed a shorthand that baffled others. One raised eyebrow from James during a meeting, and I knew exactly which document to slide. Across the table, or which call to discreetly arrange. Daniel Cross appeared 6 years ago. Young, brilliant, ruthlessly ambitious. James plucked him from the management training program after Daniel presented a revolutionary logistics algorithm that saved the company millions. James saw something in him, a younger version of himself perhaps, but 3 months ago, something changed. James became secretive, canceling meetings, taking calls in private. He looked tired, distracted. I assumed it was health-related. He was 72 after all, and worked like someone half his age. Then came the warning about the board, about Daniel. I was pulled from my memories by the sound of my phone. "Doris, have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "No, why?" "They're announcing Daniel as the permanent CEO this morning. Not interim, permanent." I nearly dropped my coffee. "That's impossible. The succession plan requires board approval, shareholder meetings, a formal search process." Apparently, there was an emergency board meeting last night. They're citing some obscure bylaw that allows them to appoint a permanent successor in case of sudden vacancy without the usual process. My mind raced. That bylaw exists for temporary appointments during crises, not for permanent succession. Well, they've reinterpreted it. Press conference at 10. I glanced at the clock. 7:45 a.m. I'll be there. Are you sure that's a good idea? You're supposed to be on bereavement leave. I thought of the note, now secured in a sealed envelope and hidden inside a hollowed-out book on my shelf. I need to see this for myself. After hanging up, I hurried to get ready, my mind churning. Why the rush to cement Daniel's position? What were they afraid of? As I was applying mascara, a memory surfaced. Something I'd forgotten in the chaos of the past few days. 2 weeks before his death, James had asked me to reschedule a board meeting so he could attend a private appointment. When I'd asked if everything was all right, he'd said something odd. Just tying up loose ends, Rachel. Making sure everything's in order. At the time, I'd assumed it was estate planning or a medical checkup. Now I wondered if he'd been preparing for something else entirely. The press conference was held in the main auditorium at Hollander headquarters. I slipped in the back, grateful that my black dress blended with the sea of suits. The board members sat in a row behind a podium bearing the company logo. Daniel stood at the microphone, looking appropriately solemn yet determined. James Hollander was more than my mentor, he was saying, his voice perfectly modulated to convey restrained emotion. He was my friend, my guide. Taking over his legacy is the greatest honor and responsibility of my life. I studied the board members. Vincent Reed's eyes kept darting to the exits. Margaret Lowe was checking her watch. Only Elise Chen and Thomas Parker maintained perfect composure, their faces masks of practiced grief. Daniel continued, "The board has unanimously approved my appointment as CEO, effective immediately. We believe this swift transition is what James would have wanted. Continuity for our clients, stability for our shareholders, certainty for our employees." Questions from the press followed. Softball inquiries about Daniel's vision, his relationship with James, the company's future. Until a reporter from the Nashville Business Journal stood up. "Mr. Cross, there are rumors that Mr. Hollander's death certificate was signed unusually quickly and that no autopsy was performed despite the circumstances. Can you address these concerns?" A ripple went through the crowd. Daniel's smile never faltered, but I saw his knuckles whiten on the podium. "James was a private man," he replied smoothly. "The board is simply honoring his wishes for dignity in death as in life. All legal requirements were met. Any suggestion otherwise is not only false, but disrespectful to his memory." His eyes scanned the crowd and landed on me. For a split second, something flashed across his face. Recognition, warning, threat. Then it was gone, replaced by his practiced smile as he called on another reporter. I slipped out before the conference ended, my heart pounding. As I pushed through the revolving doors into the lobby, a hand caught my elbow. I turned to find Samuel Hart, the company's former general counsel who had resigned 6 months earlier after decades of service. "Hello, Rachel," he said quietly. His face was gaunt, his eyes tired behind his glasses. "I think we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. His answer confirmed my worst fears. "About James, and about that note someone left you yesterday." Samuel Hart looked nothing like the confident legal powerhouse who had guided Hollander & Co. through decades of growth. His tailored suits had been replaced by a rumpled blazer over a sweater. His once commanding presence seemed diminished, as if he'd aged 10 years in 6 months. "Not here," he muttered, glancing toward the security cameras in the lobby. "Meet me at Riverside Park, the bench near the old boathouse. 1 hour." Before I could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the morning crowd of downtown Nashville. I spent the hour in a coffee shop across from headquarters, my mind racing. How did Samuel know about the note? Was he the one who left it? Or was he working with whoever did? The park was quiet that morning, the rain having driven away the usual joggers and dog walkers. Samuel sat hunched on the bench, feeding crumbs to a cluster of persistent pigeons. He didn't look up as I approached. "You're taking a risk coming here," he said as I sat beside him. "So are you," I countered. "How did you know about the note?" Samuel tossed the last of his bread to the birds. "Because I've been watching, waiting. I knew they'd move quickly after James was gone. I just didn't expect them to be so bold." Chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the damp air. "Who's they?" "The board. Primarily Daniel, Vincent, and Elise. They've been planning this for months." "Planning what exactly?" Samuel turned to face me, his eyes suddenly sharp behind his glasses. "A corporate coup and possibly murder." The word hung in the air between us. Murder, not accident, not natural causes. Murder. "That's a serious accusation," I said carefully. "Yes, it is." Samuel's voice was flat. 6 months ago, James called me to his home office on a Sunday. No assistance, no record of the meeting. He showed me financial discrepancies he'd discovered. Millions flowing through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Dubai, Singapore, all ultimately controlled by board members. My throat tightened. Money. Laundering? Among other things. Fraud, tax evasion, possibly worse. Samuel stared out at the Cumberland River, its surface rippled by the light rain. I started investigating quietly. 2 weeks later, my home was broken into. Nothing taken, but my files were clearly searched. A week after that, my brakes failed on the highway. I gasped. You think they tried to kill you? I know they did. The mechanic found the brake line had been cleanly cut. The police wrote it off as vandalism. He gave a bitter laugh. I resigned the next day, told James I was having health problems. I was afraid if I told him the truth, he'd confront them directly and He trailed off. But they got to him anyway. I finished. Samuel nodded grimly. James wouldn't let it go. He continued investigating on his own. Last month, he contacted me secretly, said he had evidence, hard proof that would send half the board to prison. He was going to take it to the FBI. He paused. 3 days later, he was dead. The implications hit me like a physical blow. James hadn't fallen. He'd been pushed. Or worse. The note, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It said he's alive. Samuel's eyes widened. Slightly. Show me. I hesitated, then reached into my purse and handed him the sealed envelope containing the note. He opened it carefully, read the 5 words, then looked up at me. This isn't my handwriting, he said. I never thought it was. But you thought I might know who wrote it. I nodded. Samuel handed the note back to me. I don't, but I do know this. James suspected they might try to fake his death. What? Why would he? Insurance, Samuel interrupted. If they believed he was dead, they'd stop looking for him, stop trying to silence him. Hope flared briefly in my chest, then died. But there was a body, Samuel. A funeral. Was there? He countered. Did you see the body? An open casket? I thought back. The casket had remained closed throughout the service. No, but... And the death certificate, signed by Dr. Marcus Elliott. Do you know who that is? I shook my head. Neither do I. And I've checked. There's no Dr. Marcus Elliott licensed in Tennessee. The signature is real, but the doctor isn't. My mind struggled to process this information. Are you saying James faked his own death? I'm saying it's possible. Either he's alive and in hiding, gathering evidence, or he's truly dead, and someone wants me to believe otherwise. I finished. But why? What would be the point of the note if he's really gone? Samuel leaned closer. To see what you do with it, who you talk to, whether you're a threat. A new thought struck me. The old man at the funeral. He warned me the board was lying, said to be careful. What old man? What did he look like? I described him. Elderly, navy cap, gruff voice. Samuel shook his head. Doesn't sound familiar. But James had connections outside the company, people even I didn't know about. We sat in silence for a moment, the implications settling around us like the light rain. What do we do? I finally asked. We need to find out if James is really dead or alive, and we need to secure whatever evidence he gathered. Samuel stood, suddenly businesslike. Your apartment isn't safe. They'll be watching you now. What? Why would they? Because you were the closest person to James. You knew his schedule, his habits, his secrets. If anyone might know where he hid evidence, it's you. Fear crept up my spine. You think they'll come after me? I think they already are. Samuel handed me a burner phone. My number is programmed in. Use it only for emergencies. Don't trust anyone at the company, not even Doris. Doris wouldn't. Everyone has a price, Rachel, or a pressure point. His expression softened slightly. Go back to work tomorrow. Act normal. But be observant. Look for anything unusual in James's files, his calendar, his correspondence from the last few months. I nodded, slipping the phone into my purse next to the note. And Rachel? Samuel's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Watch Daniel cross like a hawk. He's more dangerous than you know. As I walked back to my car, I felt as if I'd stepped into someone else's life, some paranoid thriller where trusted colleagues became potential killers and nothing was as it seemed. I was so distracted that I almost missed it. The black sedan parked across from my car, engine idling. As I approached, it pulled away smoothly, too quickly for me to see the driver. That night, I double-checked the locks on my doors and windows. I placed a chair under my doorknob, feeling ridiculous even as I did it. I tucked Samuel's burner phone under my pillow and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I was awakened by a sound, subtle, but distinct. Someone was trying my front door, testing the knob with careful precision. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The chair beneath the knob shifted slightly as pressure was applied from the outside. Then silence. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing, for what felt like hours. Finally, I heard soft footsteps retreating down the hallway. In the morning, there was no sign of the attempted intrusion except for a tiny scratch on the doorknob, the kind made by amateur lock-picking tools. Samuel was right. They were watching me, and now they were coming for me. I had never felt more alone, or more determined to uncover the truth. I returned to work the next day, forcing myself to act normal despite my racing thoughts and the exhaustion of a sleepless night. Hollander Tower looked the same as always, 60 floors of glass and steel dominating the Nashville skyline, the company logo gleaming in the morning sun. But it felt different now, threatening, full of secrets and watchful eyes. The security guard nodded as I badged in. "Welcome back, Ms. Avery. Sorry for your loss." I managed a sad smile. "Thank you, Joe." The executive floor was hushed, conversations dropping, to whispers as I passed. Everyone watching, wondering how James Hollander's right-hand woman would fare now that he was gone. I kept my head high, my expression neutral. Just another day at the office. Nothing to see here. Doris intercepted me at my desk, enveloping me in a jasmine-scented hug. "I didn't expect you back so soon," she said, concern evident in her voice. "I couldn't stay home." "Another day," I replied, the lie coming easily. "Too quiet? Too many memories?" She squeezed my arm sympathetically. "They've already cleaned out James's office. Daniel's moving in this afternoon." My stomach clenched. "Already? That seems fast." "Everything's happening fast," Doris agreed, lowering her voice. "Half the executive team is being reshuffled. There are rumors of layoffs in logistics. And operations. Daniel's consolidating power," I murmured, almost to myself. Doris glanced around nervously. "Be careful, Rachel. The walls have ears these days." She paused. "There's something else. They want to reassign you. Daniel's bringing in his own assistant. I had expected this, but it still stung. Where are they sending me?" "Records management, effective immediately." I almost laughed. Records management, the corporate equivalent of Siberia, where careers went to die. But it was also where all the company's files were stored, including James's personal records. "I see," I said neutrally. "I fought for you," Doris insisted, but Daniel was adamant. "It's fine," I assured her, summoning a brave smile. "I could use something less emotionally charged right now." Doris didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "I'll help you pack your things." My new office was actually a windowless room in the basement, surrounded by rows of filing cabinets and storage boxes. My job, as explained by a bored HR representative, was to digitize old paper records and organize the electronic filing system. "Mr. Cross feels your organizational skills would be valuable in modernizing our record keeping," the representative recited mechanically. Translation: I was being buried where I couldn't cause trouble. But they had made a crucial mistake. They had given me access to everything. I spent the morning setting up my new space and familiarizing myself with the filing system. By lunchtime, I had mapped out where James's personal files would be stored and how to access the electronic records without triggering security alerts. I waited until the lunch hour was in full swing, then made my move. James's personal files were kept in a locked cabinet in a corner of the records room. The key should have been in the master lockbox, but it wasn't. Someone had removed it. Another roadblock. I returned to my desk, thinking. James's leather portfolio lay beside my computer. I'd brought it with me, unable to part with this last tangible connection to him. I picked it up, running my fingers over the worn leather, and suddenly remembered something. James had a habit of hiding small items in the portfolio's hidden pocket, a feature he'd had custom made. Spare cufflinks, memory cards, occasionally an emergency cigar. I turned the portfolio over and felt along the inner seam, until I found the subtle zipper, nearly invisible against the leather. Inside was a small, flat key. My hands trembled as I extracted it. The key was unmarked, but I knew instantly what it was for. Not the file cabinet. Something more important. James's private safe. Every executive at Hollander had a personal safe in their office. When I'd started working for James, he'd shown me his hidden behind a false panel in his bookshelf and told me the combination. In case anything ever happens to me, he'd said, but he'd never mentioned a key. I needed to get into his old office, now Daniel's. But how? The opportunity came sooner than expected. That afternoon, an email went out announcing an all-hands meeting at 3 p.m. to discuss the company's exciting new direction. Perfect timing. The executive floor would be empty. At 2:55, I took the elevator up, a stack of folders in my arms as camouflage. The executive suite was deserted, everyone already heading to the auditorium. James's, now Daniel's, office door was closed but not locked. I slipped inside, my heart pounding. The room had been transformed in just a few days. James's collections of vintage maps and first edition books were gone, replaced by modern art and tech gadgets. His worn leather chair had been swapped for a sleek ergonomic model. It was as if they were erasing him, piece by piece. I moved quickly to the bookshelf. The false panel was still there, hidden behind a row of business books that Daniel probably never intended to read. I slid it open, revealing the safe. I entered the combination James had given me years ago, but nothing happened. They'd changed it. Of course they had. But why had James given me this key if the combination had been changed? I examined the safe more closely and noticed something I'd never seen before, a small keyhole beneath the digital pad. I inserted the key and turned it. There was a soft click, and a hidden compartment at the bottom of the safe slid open. Inside was a single USB drive, labeled with one word in James's distinctive handwriting: truth. I pocketed the drive just as I heard voices in the hallway. I quickly closed the safe, replaced the panel, and moved to the door. The voices were getting closer. Trapped. I looked around desperately for a hiding place. The private bathroom? Too obvious. Under the desk? Ridiculous. The voices stopped right outside the door. The handle turned. In a moment of inspiration, I grabbed my phone and put it to my ear, striding toward the door as it opened. Daniel Cross stood there, flanked by Elise Chen. "Yes, I understand," I said into my silent phone, brushing past their surprised faces. "I'll get those files to you right away." I continued down the hallway without looking back, my legs threatening to give way, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. I made it to the elevator before I allowed myself to breathe. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Daniel watching me from the end of the hallway, his expression unreadable. Back in my basement office, I locked the door and inserted the USB drive into my computer. It was encrypted, requiring a password. I tried James's usual passwords. Nothing worked. I tried his wife's name, his anniversary, his children's birthdays. Still nothing. Then I remembered something James once said: "The best password is an inside joke only one other person would understand." I typed in Manhattan without ice, a reference to the way James always ordered his favorite cocktail, and a private joke between us. The drive unlocked. What I found inside would change everything. The contents of the USB drive left me breathless. It contained hundreds of files meticulously organized in folders labeled by date, financial records, board meeting recordings James had made secretly, emails, bank transfers, offshore account details, all documented with James's characteristic precision. But what stunned me most was a video file labeled "Watch First." With trembling fingers, I clicked play. James appeared on screen, sitting in his home office. He looked tired, the lines in his face deeper than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp, determined. He wore the same navy suit he'd worn the last time I saw him alive. "Rachel," he began, his familiar voice sending a wave of emotion through me. "If you're watching this, then one of two things has happened. Either I've been killed, or I've disappeared and successfully made them believe I'm dead." I gasped. So Samuel was right. "I discovered something 3 months ago," James continued. "Financial irregularities that led me down a rabbit hole of corruption within my own company. The board, specifically Daniel Cross, Vincent Reed, and Elise Chen, have been systematically looting Hollander and Cobers through a network of shells. Companies. We're talking about nearly $200 million diverted over 5 years. He rubbed his eyes wearily. At first, I thought it was just greed, but it's more than that. They're using the money to finance something called Project Phoenix. I don't know what it is yet, but it involves government contracts, experimental technology, and a level of secrecy that frightens me. James leaned closer to the camera. When I started asking questions, things changed. I noticed I was being followed. My home security system registered unauthorized access attempts. My personal physician suddenly retired and was replaced by someone I'd never met. And then there was the coffee. He held up a small vial. This was in my coffee last week, a slow-acting neurotoxin that would have caused symptoms identical to early-onset Alzheimer's, followed by fatal heart failure within months. Impossible to detect without specific testing. Fortunately, I've been having all my food and drink analyzed since the surveillance began. My hand flew to my mouth. They had been trying to poison him. I realized then that I was running out of time. If they're willing to kill me slowly, they won't hesitate to make it look like an accident if they get impatient. James's expression hardened. So I decided to beat them at their own game. I'm going to disappear, Rachel. Make them believe I'm dead while I gather the final pieces of evidence I need. He paused, and for a moment, the armor slipped, revealing the man beneath, my mentor, my friend. I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but you're the only one I trust completely. Samuel Hart knows parts of this, but not everything. Not about my plan. James looked directly into the camera, his gaze intense. Find Samuel. Show him this drive. Together, follow the evidence. If I'm truly dead, then they got to me before I could disappear, and this drive is all that's left of the truth. If I'm alive, I'll contact you when it's safe, through channels only you would recognize. He glanced down at his watch. I don't have much time. Everything you need is on this drive, including a file called Contingency that explains what to do if I don't resurface within 30 days of my death. Be careful who you trust, Rachel. They'll be watching you. His expression softened one last time. You've been more than an assistant to me. You've been family. Whatever happens, remember that. The video ended. I sat motionless, tears streaming down my face, my mind racing to process everything I'd just learned. James had planned his own disappearance, or tried to, but was he successful? Or had they found him first? I needed to get this to Samuel immediately, but first I had to see what else was on the drive. I quickly scanned through the folders. The financial records were damning. Detailed trails showing how money was siphoned from legitimate company projects into offshore accounts controlled by shell companies. Those shell companies then consulted on other Hollander projects, creating a complex web of transactions that disguised the theft. The most recent folder contained something labeled Phoenix Documentation. Inside was a partial proposal for a government contract, something involving neurological compliance systems, and non-invasive behavioral modification. The language was deliberately vague, couched in euphemisms, but the implications were chilling. This wasn't just embezzlement. It was something far darker. A knock at my door made me jump. I quickly ejected the drive and slipped it into my pocket. Rachel? Doris's voice called. Are you in? There? I composed myself and opened the door. Hey, sorry. I was focused on organizing these files. Doris looked concerned. You missed the all-hands meeting. Oh, right. I got caught up in this project. I gestured vaguely at the stacks of files. Well, you didn't miss much. Just Daniel announcing his vision and some organizational changes. She lowered her voice. A lot of people are being let go, Rachel. Mostly James's longtime allies. A purge. They were removing anyone who might question Daniel's ascension or harbor loyalty to James. That's terrible, I said, trying to sound appropriately concerned but not suspicious. Doris nodded. Listen, a few of us are meeting for drinks at Harper's tonight, to commiserate and, well, just to check in with each other. You should come. I hesitated. I needed to get the drive to Samuel, but appearing too eager to leave work might raise red flags. That sounds good, I said. What time? 6:30. And Rachel? Doris glanced over her shoulder before continuing. There's something else you should know. They've been asking questions about you. HR, security, even Daniel himself. My pulse quickened. What kind of questions? About your relationship with James. Whether he shared sensitive information with you. If you've been acting unusual since his death. She squeezed my arm. I covered for you, of course. Said you were just grieving. But be careful. After Doris left, I texted Samuel using the burner phone. Found something important. Need to meet tonight. His reply came almost immediately. 8 p.m. Centennial Park, near EI. The Parthenon replica. Come alone and make sure you're not followed. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. I forced myself to focus on the records management task I'd been assigned, all while feeling the weight of the USB drive in my pocket. At 5:30, I gathered my things, including James's portfolio, and headed out. Harper's was a small bar a few blocks from the office, popular with Hollander. Employees. I arrived to find a group from my department already there, Doris among them. The mood was somber. News of the layoffs had spread quickly. I nursed a single glass of wine, participating just enough in the conversation to avoid suspicion, while keeping an eye on the time. At 7:15, I made my excuses and left, claiming exhaustion. Outside, I took precautions as Samuel had instructed. I walked 3 blocks in the opposite direction from my destination, then hailed a cab to a shopping center. From there, I took another cab to Centennial Park, asking to be dropped off at the far entrance. The park was quiet, the replica Parthenon illuminated against the night sky. I made my way toward it, staying in the shadows, constantly checking to see if I was being followed. Samuel was waiting, exactly where he'd said he would be, sitting on a bench with a newspaper, looking for all the world like an ordinary man enjoying the evening. "Were you followed?" he asked without preamble as I sat beside him. "I don't think so. I was careful." "Good. What did you find?" I pulled out the USB drive. "James left this in a hidden compartment in his safe. It's incredible, Samuel. And terrifying." I explained the contents, the financial records, the mysterious Project Phoenix, and most importantly, James's video message. Samuel listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I mentioned Project Phoenix, he inhaled sharply. "I've heard whispers about this," he said. "Defense contractors, private equity firms, government agencies all involved in something. Highly classified, but I never imagined Hollander was part of it." "What exactly is it?" I asked. "I don't know for certain, but based on what you're describing..." He trailed off, looking troubled. "We need to examine that drive more thoroughly. Not here, though. It's not safe." He stood. "I have a place, off the grid. We can go there now." As we walked toward the park exit, I felt a weight, lifting. I wasn't alone in this anymore. With Samuel's help, we could uncover the truth about James and expose whatever conspiracy had taken over Hollander & Co. I never saw the taser until it was too late. The last thing I remember was a sharp pain in my back, Samuel shouting my name, and the USB drive falling from my hand as darkness claimed me. I awoke to the taste of copper in my mouth and the steady beep of a heart monitor. My vision swam, gradually focusing on a sterile white ceiling. Hospital. I was in a hospital. "She's awake," said a female voice I didn't recognize. A face appeared above me, a nurse with kind eyes and a concerned expression. "Ms. Avery, can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my tongue thick and uncooperative. I managed a weak nod instead. "You're at Nashville General," she explained. "You had an accident in Centennial Park. Do you remember anything?" An accident. Is that what they were calling it? Flashes of memory returned. Samuel, the USB drive, the sudden pain. Not an accident. An attack. "Water," I croaked. She held a cup with a straw to my lips. The cool liquid was bliss against my parched throat. "The doctor will be in shortly," she said, adjusting my IV. "And there's a police officer waiting to speak with you. Oh, and your colleague has been here all night. She's just stepped out for coffee." Colleague? My heart raced. Who knew I was here? The nurse left, and I quickly assessed my situation. No restraints, which was good. My purse was on the bedside table, but I knew without checking that the burner phone would be gone. So, would the USB drive, which had fallen when I was attacked. But where was Samuel? Had he escaped? Been captured too? The door opened, and Doris walked in, carrying 2 coffee cups. Relief flooded her face when she saw me awake. "Rachel, thank God." She rushed to my side, setting the coffees down to take my hand. "We've been so worried." "What happened?" I asked, my voice still raspy. Doris's eye expression darkened. "You were mugged in Centennial Park. Some joggers found you unconscious near the Parthenon. Your wallet and phone were gone. A cover story. But who had crafted it? And why was Doris here?" "How did you know I was here?" I asked carefully. "The hospital called me. I'm your emergency contact, remember?" Her eyes filled with concern. "But what were you doing in the park at night? You said you were going home after drinks." Before I could formulate a response, the door opened again. A police officer entered, followed by a doctor and, my blood ran cold, Daniel Cross. "Ms. Avery," the officer said. "Glad to see you're awake. I'm Officer Tanner. I'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened last night." Daniel hung back, his face a perfect mask of concerned employer. "I hope you don't mind my being here, Rachel. When Doris called to tell me what happened, I was so concerned. Hollander takes care of its own. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I knew. He was behind the attack. He was here to see what I remembered, what I might say. The doctor, a thin man with salt and pepper hair, checked my vitals and pupil response. You're lucky, Ms. Avery. The taser caused you to fall and hit your head, but there's no serious damage. Just a mild concussion and some bruising. We'd like to keep you for observation today, but you should be able to go home tomorrow. Thank you, doctor, I managed. Officer Tanner pulled out a notepad. Can you tell me what you remember from last night? I made a split-second decision. If Daniel was here, it meant he didn't know what I'd told Samuel. He didn't know about the USB drive, which meant there was a chance Samuel had escaped with it. Not much, I said, feigning confusion. I went for a walk in the park after having drinks with colleagues. I was near the Parthenon, and then nothing. You don't remember being approached by anyone? Threatened? I shook my head, then winced at the pain the movement caused. No. It's all a blank. The officer made some notes. Unfortunately, there were no witnesses to the actual attack, and that area of the park doesn't have surveillance cameras. We're treating it as a random mugging for now. Daniel stepped forward. Officer, we appreciate your diligence. Hollander and Comer will be offering a reward for any information about who did this to our valued employee. His concern was so convincing, so seemingly genuine, that for a moment I almost doubted my own suspicions. Almost. After the officer left, Daniel pulled up a chair beside my bed. Doris excused herself to give us privacy. Rachel, Daniel began, his voice soft with practiced compassion. I can't tell you how upset I was to hear about this. First James, now you being attacked. It's been a terrible week for our Hollander family. I managed a weak smile. Thank you for coming. Of course. He leaned closer. Rachel, I know things have been chaotic since James's passing, and I understand that you might feel displaced with all the changes. Here it comes, I thought. But I want you to know that you still have a place at Hollander. In fact, I've been thinking that records management isn't the right fit for someone with your talents. Oh? I kept my expression neutral, waiting. I'd like to offer you a position as my special projects coordinator, working directly with me, but with more autonomy than an assistant role. Better compensation, of course. Keep your enemies closer. He wanted me where he could watch me, control what I saw and did. That's very generous, I said, trying to sound appropriately grateful. Take some time to think about it. Rest. Recover. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The police found something odd when they were searching the area where you were attacked. My pulse quickened. An old man's cap. Navy blue. Does that mean anything to you? The old man from the funeral. The one who had warned me. Was he involved somehow? Had he been watching? Me? No. I lied. Should it? Daniel studied my face carefully, then shrugged. Probably nothing. Just seemed out of place. He headed for the door. Oh, and Rachel, when you're feeling better, I'd like you to clean out James's remaining personal items from storage. As his assistant, you'd know best what should go to his family. Another test. Another way to watch me. Of course, I agreed. After he left, I closed my eyes, my mind racing despite the pounding headache. Samuel was missing. The USB drive was gone. And Daniel was circling, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. I needed to find Samuel. I needed to recover that evidence. But most of all, I needed to know if James was really alive or dead. As I drifted back to sleep, a new thought occurred to me, one that sent a chill down my spine despite the warm hospital blankets. What if the attack hadn't been Daniel's people at all? What if there was a third player in this dangerous game? The hospital released me the following afternoon with instructions to rest and avoid strenuous activity, advice I had no intention of following. Doris insisted on driving me home, fussing over me like a mother hen. I've stocked your fridge, she said as she helped me into my apartment. And I'll check on you tomorrow. Daniel's given me permission to work remotely so I can help you. That's really not necessary, I protested, alarmed at the thought of Doris hovering while I tried to continue my investigation. Nonsense. You had a concussion, Rachel. You shouldn't be alone. She set my bag down and turned to face me, her expression suddenly serious. Besides, after what happened to James, and now you being attacked, I'm worried. I studied her face, looking for any sign that she knew more than she was letting on. Was Doris truly concerned, or was she Daniel's spy? The doubt itself felt like a betrayal. Doris had been my friend for years. I appreciate the concern, I said carefully, but I promise I'll be fine. I just need some peace and quiet. She seemed reluctant to leave, but finally agreed when I pleaded exhaustion. As soon as the door closed behind her, I did a thorough sweep of my apartment, checking for signs of intrusion or surveillance devices. Nothing obvious, but that didn't mean they weren't watching. I needed to contact Samuel, but my burner phone was gone, likely taken by whoever attacked us. My regular phone might be monitored. I paced the apartment, weighing my options. My gaze fell on James's leather portfolio, which Doris had brought from my office along with my other personal items. I picked it up, running my fingers over the worn leather, seeking comfort in this last tangible connection to my mentor. As I did, I noticed something odd. The hidden pocket seemed fuller than I remembered. Curious, I unzipped it and found a small flash drive I hadn't seen before, along with a folded note. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably Samuel's. R. If you're reading this, something went wrong. This is a backup of key files. The password is the name of Jay's favorite fishing spot plus the year you started working for him. Be careful who you trust. I'll contact you through classified section, Nashville Herald, username Fisherman. S. Relief washed over me. Samuel had anticipated trouble and prepared a backup, but was he safe? Had he escaped the attack? I inserted the flash drive into my laptop, entering the password, Cumberland Ben 2010. The drive unlocked, revealing a subset of the files I'd seen on the original USB. Financial records. Key. Documents about Project Phoenix, and a copy of James's video. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to continue the investigation. I spent the next few hours reviewing the files, taking notes on a legal pad rather than creating digital records that might be discovered. The picture that emerged was even more disturbing than I'd initially realized. Project Phoenix wasn't just about embezzlement. It involved a technology called neurological compliance systems, a fancy term for what appeared to be sophisticated mind control. Hollander's logistics network was being used to transport components and test subjects under the guise of routine shipping operations. Daniel Cross wasn't just a thief. He was potentially involved in human experimentation. But one question remained unanswered. Was James alive or dead? The next morning, I checked the classified section of the Nashville Herald online. There, under personal messages, was an ad. Fisherman seeks river guide. Experience with Cumberland currents essential. Meet at the place where the water runs backward. 9 p.m. tonight. Samuel was alive, and he wanted to meet at Reverse Flow, a bar near the Cumberland River known for its unusual name, derived from a rare hydrological phenomenon where the river briefly flows backward during certain tide conditions. I spent the day preparing. I couldn't risk using my car, which might be tracked, so I mapped out a route using public transportation. I dressed in nondescript clothing, adding a baseball cap and sunglasses as a basic disguise. I transferred the flash drive contents to a new, smaller drive that I could hide more easily. At 6 p.m., I left my apartment, taking a deliberately convoluted route to the bar, bus to the mall, taxi to the university, walking the last half mile, doubling back several times to ensure I wasn't followed. Reverse Flow was dimly lit and half empty, perfect for a clandestine meeting. I spotted Samuel in a corner booth nursing a whiskey. He looked worse than before. A bandage on his temple, dark circles under his eyes, a nervous energy in his movements. "You're okay," he said with palpable relief as I slid into the booth. "I wasn't sure after they took you." "Took me?" "Samuel, I woke up in the hospital. They said I was mugged." His eyes widened. "That's their cover story? Interesting. When they tased you, I fought back. Got hit pretty hard myself." He touched his bandaged temple. "But I managed to grab the USB and run. I thought they'd captured you." "Who is they? Daniel's people?" Samuel shook his head. "Not Daniel. Someone else. They were too professional, too efficient, military or intelligence trained." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "A third party?" "I think so. Someone interested in Project Phoenix. Probably. Government adjacent, but not official." He leaned forward. "Did you find my backup?" I nodded. "And your message. Smart thinking. Did anyone see you coming here? Daniel? Doris?" "No, I was careful. But Daniel's offered me a new position. Special Projects Coordinator. Working directly with him." Samuel's expression darkened. "He's trying to keep you close. Monitor you." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd think about it. I'm playing along for now. Good. We need access to Hollander's systems. He paused. I've been analyzing the files. There's something bigger happening. The financial fraud is just the surface. Project Phoenix, I said. I saw the documents. Neural compliance technology? What does that even mean? Mind control, essentially. Subtler than it sounds. Technology that can influence decisions without subjects realizing they're being manipulated. The military applications alone would be worth billions. I shivered. And James discovered this? Yes. But there's more. Samuel pulled out a small notebook. After examining the financial records more carefully, I found something strange. The money isn't just going out. There are also payments coming in, large ones, from offshore accounts that trace back to a company called Prometheus Partners. Who are they? A front, almost certainly. But here's where it gets interesting. He turned the notebook to show me his notes. The payment started exactly 3 days after James's accident. The implication hit me. They're paying for something they only got access to after James was gone. Exactly. And I think that something is James himself. My breath caught. You think he's alive? That they're holding him somewhere? It's a theory. The payments are consistent with high-level security and medical care. And there's this. He slid a newspaper clipping across the table. It showed a small article about a private medical facility in the Cayman Islands that had recently received a high-profile patient under unusual security measures. I've been trying to get more information, but these places are fortresses of privacy. However, I have a contact, a nurse who left the facility recently. She's agreed to meet me tomorrow. Hope surged within me. I'm coming with you. No, it's too dangerous. Besides, I need you inside Hollander. Accept Daniel's offer. Get close. Find out what happened to James's personal effects, especially his phone and laptop. There might be additional evidence there. I reluctantly agreed. How will we stay in contact? Samuel handed me a new burner phone. Encrypted. Only use it for text messages in code. I'm Uncle Sam. You're River. James is Fisherman. As we finalized our plans, I noticed Samuel repeatedly glancing toward the door. What's wrong? I asked. Probably. Nothing, he said, but his tension was palpable. Just being cautious. We should leave separately. I'll go first. Wait 15 minutes, then take this exit. He indicated a back door. After Samuel left, I sipped my untouched drink, watching the minutes tick by. 13 minutes later, as I prepared to leave, the bar's door opened, and my heart nearly stopped. Doris walked in, scanning the room, until her eyes locked with mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked directly to my booth and sat down across from me. So, she said, her voice neutral, want to tell me what's really going on? Doris, I stammered, struggling to maintain composure. What are you doing here? Following you, she replied bluntly. And before you get indignant, I've been following you since you left the hospital. Because I'm worried, Rachel, and because I'm not stupid. I weighed my options. Denial seemed pointless. How did you find me? I put a tracker in your purse after the attack. She at least had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was terrified something would happen to you again. You invaded my privacy, I said, anger rising. Yes, to protect you. Her eyes softened. Rachel, James was like a father to you. I get that you're grieving, that you might be looking for answers, but meeting secretly with Samuel Hart, the man who abandoned James and the company when things got tough, it's dangerous. The accusation against Samuel stung. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me. She reached across the table and took my hand. We've been friends for 10 years. Trust me. I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Doris had always been straightforward, reliable. But then, I'd once thought the same of the entire board. I'm not sure I can trust anyone right now, I said finally. If you can't trust me, then who? She squeezed my hand. Look, something isn't right at Hollander. I've felt it too. The rushed succession, the sudden layoffs, the way they're erasing James from the company like he never existed. Her words mirrored my own thoughts so closely that I felt my resolve weakening. Maybe Doris could help. Maybe I needed her to. If I tell you, I said carefully, there's no going back. You could be in danger too. I'm already in this, whatever this is. Her expression was determined, and 2 heads are better than 1. I took a deep breath and made my decision. Not here. Let's go somewhere private. We ended up at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, seated in a corner booth far from other patrons. Over coffee that grew cold as we talked, I told Doris everything. The note at the funeral, Samuel's warnings, the financial fraud, Project Phoenix, and the possibility that James might still be alive. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock to grim acceptance. "My God," she whispered when I finished. "If even half of this is true, it's all true. I've seen the evidence." Doris massaged her temples. "So what's the plan? Go to the FBI?" "Not yet. We need more concrete proof that would stand up in court. And we need to find out if James is alive. And Samuel's meeting this nurse tomorrow? The one from the Cayman Islands facility?" I nodded. "He thinks James might be held there." Doris was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I want to help, and I might be in a position to do so. As head of HR, I have access to security protocols, personnel files, travel records, things that could corroborate your findings. It would be a huge risk," I warned. "If they suspect you're helping us." "They won't. Unlike you, I haven't been demoted. I'm still trusted." She smiled grimly. "And I'm a better actor than people give me credit for." We spent the next hour developing a plan. Doris would gather information from within Hollander while maintaining her role as Daniel's trusted HR director. I would accept the special projects position to gain closer access to Daniel and the board. Samuel would pursue the lead in the Caymans. We would share information using secure channels and meet only when absolutely necessary. "There's one more thing," Doris said as we prepared to leave. "They're cleaning out James's estate this weekend. His personal effects are being cataloged for probate. If there's anything there that might help us, this is our only chance to find it. How do we get access?" "I'm coordinating with the estate lawyers on behalf of Hollander. I can bring an assistant." She raised an eyebrow. "Interested?" The next morning, I called Daniel and accepted his job offer. His pleasure seemed genuine, though I now recognized it as the satisfaction of a predator whose trap had been successfully set. "Wonderful news, Rachel. We'll start Monday. Take the weekend to rest and recover." "Actually," I said, injecting just the right amount of eagerness into my voice, "I'd like to help Doris with cataloging James's personal effects for the estate, if that's all right." There was a slight pause. "Of course. That's thoughtful of you. I'm sure Mrs. Hollander will appreciate it." I spent Friday preparing. I studied the layout of James's estate from photos online, a sprawling lakefront property 30 minutes outside Nashville. I researched what to look for: hidden safes, concealed compartments, encrypted devices. I texted Samuel about our plan, and though he expressed concern about involving Doris, he agreed we needed the access. Saturday morning, Doris picked me up in her Honda Civic. The drive to James's estate was tense, both of us aware of the risks we were taking. "Remember," Doris said as we approached the property's imposing gates, "we're just doing our jobs. Professional, efficient, nothing suspicious." The gates opened after Doris showed her ID to the security guard. We drove up the winding driveway to the main house, a modern mansion of glass and stone overlooking Old Hickory Lake. Inside, a team was already at work. Estate lawyers, appraisers, household staff, movers carried art and furniture. No one paid much attention to us as Doris checked in with the lead attorney. "We're focusing on his personal papers and office items," she explained to me loudly enough for others to hear. "Anything relevant to company operations?" James's home office was on the second floor, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking the lake. It had already been partially packed, boxes labeled with contents stacked along one wall. "Let's get started," Doris said, closing the door behind us. "We don't have much time." We worked systematically, searching desk drawers, bookshelves, filing cabinets. Most of James's business documents had already been removed, likely by Daniel's people, searching for the same evidence we sought. After an hour of finding nothing significant, my frustration mounted. "They've already cleaned it out," I muttered. "Maybe not everything," Doris replied, examining the room carefully. James was old school. He wouldn't keep all his secrets in digital form. I remembered something James once told me. "The best hiding place isn't a secret compartment, Rachel. It's something so ordinary no one thinks to look twice." My eyes scanned the room, looking for the ordinary, the overlooked. They landed on a chess set displayed on a side table. An antique set James had mentioned was a gift from his father. I approached it, studying the hand-carved pieces. "James played chess," I said slowly, "but he always said he wasn't very good at it." "So?" Doris was flipping through a calendar. So, why keep an expensive chess set prominently displayed? I examined the board more closely. It looked normal, but when I ran my fingers along the edge, I felt a slight irregularity. I pressed it, and with a soft click, a hidden drawer slid out from beneath the board. Inside was a small notebook and a keycard with no identifying marks. "Doris!" I called, my heart racing. I found something. The notebook was small, bound in worn leather, filled with James's distinctive handwriting. Unlike his meticulous business notes, these entries were cryptic. Locations, dates, initials, and what appeared to be chess notations. The most recent entry, dated 3 days before his death, contained only 2 lines. P to K4, check, Kingfisher Resort. Room 414. Kingfisher Resort, I murmured. That's in the Cayman Islands. Doris leaned over my shoulder. The same place where Samuel's contact works. I flipped through earlier pages, finding references to offshore accounts, meeting times, and code names for board members. He was documenting everything, building his case. "What about the key card?" Doris asked. I examined it closely. No logo, no identifying marks, just a magnetic strip and a small alphanumeric code printed in the corner, KF414. "It matches the room number," I said, excitement building. "This could be the key to wherever they're keeping him." I texted Samuel immediately. "Found the chessboard. King is at Kingfisher, room 414. Have key." His response came seconds later. "Don't move. Coming to you." I showed Doris the exchange. "We need to get to the Cayman Islands." "Rachel, slow down. We need more than a key card and cryptic notes before we go charging off to another country." She was right, of course, but the possibility that James might be alive, might be waiting for rescue, made rational thought difficult. "At least let's finish searching the office," Doris suggested. "There might be more evidence." We continued our methodical examination of James's belongings. In a box of family photos, I found something odd, a USB drive disguised as a Hollander and Cumber promotional keychain. It was cleverly done. Only someone who knew James would recognize that he'd never used such a tacky item. I pocketed it without showing Doris, not because I didn't trust her, but because the fewer people who knew about each piece of evidence, the safer we all were. An hour later, a text from Samuel advised us to meet him at a nearby gas station. We made our excuses to the estate team, something about needing supplies, and drove to the rendezvous point. Samuel was waiting in a nondescript rental car, his expression tense. "Did anyone follow you?" "I don't think so," Doris said, glancing in her rearview mirror. "But we shouldn't stay here long." We showed Samuel the notebook and keycard. His eyes widened as he examined the chess notations. "This confirms it," he said. "My contact at the Kingfisher Resort told me a patient was brought in 3 weeks ago. Unconscious, under heavy security. Private wing, limited staff access. The timing matches James's disappearance." "So he's alive?" My voice broke slightly. "It seems likely. But getting to him won't be easy. The resort is actually a high-end medical facility disguised as a luxury hotel. Very exclusive, very secure." Doris frowned. "Why not just go to the authorities with what we know?" "Because we don't have enough," Samuel replied. "Nothing that directly implicates Daniel or the board. Nothing that proves definitively that James is being held against his will. We need more." "Like what?" I asked. "Like James himself, or at least undeniable proof of what they're doing to him." Samuel looked grim. "I leave for the Caymans tonight. I've booked a room at the Kingfisher as a medical tourist seeking their rejuvenation therapy." "I'm coming with you," I said immediately. Samuel shook his head. "Too risky. They might recognize you as James's assistant." "I don't care. If James is there, I need to see him." "And what about Daniel's job offer?" Doris interjected. "You're supposed to start Monday." I had forgotten about that in the excitement of our discovery. "I'll call in sick, food poisoning or something." Samuel considered this, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but you'll need a disguise and a cover story, and Doris stays here to be our eyes and ears at Hollander." Doris agreed, though she looked worried. "What if Daniel gets suspicious? Tell him I had a setback from the concussion. Buy us a few days." We spent the next hour planning our approach. Samuel would enter the resort first as planned. I would arrive the following day as his personal assistant, using a fake name and disguise. Together, we would find a way to access room 414 using the key card. As we finalized details, I remembered the USB drive from James's office. I pulled it out, explaining where I'd found it. "We should check what's on it before we leave," Samuel said. "It might contain information we need." We drove to a nearby library to use a public computer. The USB contained a single encrypted file. After several attempts with various passwords, we tried Kingfisher, and it worked. The file contained detailed schematics of the Kingfisher Resort's security systems, including access codes, guard rotations, and the layout of the private medical wing. James had been planning his own rescue. "This changes everything," Samuel said, studying the schematics. "With this, we might actually have a chance." 24 hours later, I was on a flight to Grand Bao. Came in wearing a brunette wig and glasses, traveling under the name Sarah Wilson. In my carry-on was a burner laptop containing copies of all our evidence, including the contents of both USB drives. I'd called Daniel that morning, putting on a convincing performance as someone suffering from post-concussion symptoms. He'd been understanding, even concerned, telling me to take all the time I needed to recover. The concern in his voice made my skin crawl. The Kingfisher Resort was as impressive as its website suggested, a sprawling white complex perched on a cliff overlooking the Caribbean Sea. Its medical facilities were discreetly hidden behind the facade of luxury tourism. Following our plan, I checked in as Samuel's assistant, explaining that I'd arrived ahead of him to prepare for his stay. The staff was professional and unquestioning, escorting me to a suite in the main building, far from the private medical wing where we believed James was being held. Samuel arrived an hour later, playing the role of wealthy patient to perfection. We met briefly in his suite to finalize our strategy. "The security is even tighter than the schematics suggested," he reported. "They've added, guards to the private wing, and there are cameras everywhere. So how do we get in? The key card should work, but the timing is crucial. According to my contact, there's a shift change at 2 a.m. when security is thinnest." We waited until the resort quieted for the night. At 1:45 a.m., dressed in the dark clothing we'd packed, we made our way through the deserted hallways, following the path laid out in James's schematics. The private wing was accessed through an unmarked door that looked like a utility entrance. I held my breath as I swiped the keycard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a green light flashed, and the door unlocked with a soft click. Inside was a sterile hallway that bore no resemblance to the luxurious resort. It looked like a hospital. All white walls, fluorescent lighting, and the faint smell of antiseptic. We moved quietly, checking room numbers. Most appeared unoccupied. Finally, we reached room 414, located at the end of the corridor. Again, I used the keycard. Again, the door unlocked. The room was dimly lit, the only sound the steady beep of medical monitors. And there, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by equipment, was James Hollander. My heart stopped. He was alive, but he was also clearly unconscious, connected to various machines, including a ventilator. His once robust frame had thinned, his skin pale. "James," I whispered, moving to his bedside, "we're here. We're going to get you out." Samuel was examining the medical charts at the foot of the bed. "They're keeping him in a medically induced coma," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Heavy sedatives, neurological suppressants. Can we wake him?" I asked. "Not without a doctor. It would be dangerous to suddenly withdraw these drugs." I took James's hand, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, joy that he was alive, rage at what had been done to him, fear about how to proceed. Samuel was taking photos of the medical charts in the room. "This is the proof we need," he said. "They're keeping him here against his will, drugged into unconsciousness." "It's not enough," I replied, an idea forming. "We need to know who's paying for this, who's giving the orders." I spotted a computer terminal in the corner of the room. "Can you get into that?" Samuel examined it. "It's password protected, but I might be able to—" He never finished the sentence. The door to the room swung open, and we found ourselves staring into the barrel of a gun. "Well," said a familiar voice, "this is certainly an interesting development." Vincent Reed, Hollander's CFO, stood in the doorway, weapon steady in his hand. Behind him were two security guards. "I have to admit," Vincent continued conversationally, "I didn't expect to find James's faithful assistant here. Daniel was right. To be suspicious of you." I stood protectively in front of James's bed. "It's over, Vincent. We know everything. The embezzlement, Project Phoenix, the fake death." Vincent smiled thinly. "What you know doesn't matter. What matters is what you can prove, and dead people don't testify in court. As he raised his gun, the room was suddenly flooded with light and noise. Alarms blared. The door behind Vincent burst open, knocking him forward. Men in tactical gear poured in, weapons drawn. Federal agents, hands in the air. Vincent was forced to the ground, the gun kicked away from his reach. The security guards surrendered without resistance. Through the chaos, a man in a suit approached us. Ms. Avery? Mr. Hart? I'm Special Agent Dawson, FBI. You're safe now. My legs nearly gave out with relief. How did you... We've been investigating Hollander and Co. for months, Agent Dawson explained. Your friend Doris Miller contacted us yesterday with evidence of financial crimes and potential kidnapping. We've had the resort under surveillance, waiting for the right moment to move in. Doris, our lifeline. She must have gone to the FBI immediately after we left. James needs medical. Attention, I said urgently. They've been keeping him sedated. Medical personnel are on their way. We'll have him transferred to a proper hospital. As agents secured the scene and medical staff arrived to evaluate James, I sat beside his bed, still holding his hand. You're going to be okay, I whispered. It's over now. You're safe. His fingers twitched slightly in mine. The smallest of movements, but in that moment, it meant everything. 6 months later, I stood at the window of James's hospital room in Nashville, watching autumn leaves dance across the parking lot. His recovery had been slow but steady. After weeks of careful withdrawal from the sedatives, he had regained consciousness. Then came physical therapy to rebuild muscles weakened by months of inactivity, cognitive exercises to sharpen his mind, and the emotional work of processing what had happened to him. Through it all, I had rarely left his side. Penny for your thoughts, James said from his bed, his voice stronger now but still carrying the rasp of someone who had been silent too long. I turned, smiling, just thinking about how far we've come, and how far we still have to go. He gestured to the newspaper on his bedside table. The headline read, Hollander Trial Begins, Corporate Conspiracy Exposed. The FBI investigation had uncovered a web of corruption far more extensive than we had imagined. Daniel Cross, Vincent Reed, and Elise Chen had been arrested and charged with multiple felonies: embezzlement, money laundering, conspiracy, attempted murder, and kidnapping. Margaret Lowe and Thomas Parker had turned state's evidence in exchange for reduced sentences, revealing the full scope of Project Phoenix. The technology had been designed to subtly influence decision-making through neurological manipulation, a weapon that could be deployed against political leaders, military commanders, or business competitors without their knowledge. The potential for abuse was staggering. The government had seized Hollander and Co., placing it under temporary receivership while the legal proceedings unfolded. Thousands of jobs hung in the balance. The board meeting is today, I reminded James. Are you sure you're up for it? He nodded, determination in his eyes. I've been preparing for this for months. It's time. At James's request, a special meeting of Hollanders remaining, executives and major shareholders had been called. As his strength had returned, so had his resolve to reclaim and rebuild his company. I helped him dress in a suit that hung looser than it once had but still conveyed authority. His hands no longer trembled as he fastened his cufflinks, a gift from me to replace the ones lost during his ordeal. I couldn't have done this without you, Rachel, he said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. You risked everything to find the truth. I never gave up on you, I replied simply. Samuel arrived to drive us to Hollander Tower. He looked different now, his confidence restored, his purpose renewed. After the rescue, he had agreed to return to Hollander as acting general counsel, helping to stabilize the company during the crisis. The sharks are circling, he warned as we drove. There's a faction of shareholders pushing to break up the company and sell it off in pieces. Let them try, James said calmly. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. Faces registered shock, respect, and in some cases, apprehension. James had been officially reinstated as CEO 2 weeks earlier, but this was his first appearance at headquarters since his death. He walked slowly to the head of the table, leaning slightly on a cane, but his presence was as commanding as ever. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice steady, thank you for coming. Today we begin the process of rebuilding Hollander and Co., not just its financial standing, but its integrity and its purpose. For the next hour, James outlined his vision for the company's future. No more defense contracts. No more secret projects. a return to the core logistics business with new emphasis on transparency and ethical governance. Some shareholders objected, arguing that his plan would reduce profits. James listened patiently, then responded with quiet authority. If profit is your only concern, then perhaps Hollander is no longer the right investment for you. I built this company to create value, not just wealth, to serve communities, not just shareholders. I intend to return to those principles. By the end of the meeting, James had secured enough support to move forward with his plan. As the room cleared, Doris approached us, smiling. "Welcome back, boss," she said, hugging James carefully. Her quick thinking in contacting the FBI had not only saved our lives, but had potentially saved the company as well. James had appointed her as the new chief operating officer, a position she had accepted with characteristic humility and determination. "Have you told her yet?" Doris asked James, raising an eyebrow. "I was waiting for the right moment," he replied. I looked between them, confused. "Told me what?" James turned to face me. "Rachel, I've been doing a lot of thinking during my recovery. About the future of Hollander & Co., about my own future." He paused. "I'm 63 years old. After everything that's happened, I don't want to spend what time I have left behind this desk." My heart sank. "You're retiring?" "Transitioning," he corrected with a small smile. "And I need someone to take over. Someone who knows this company inside and out. Someone with integrity, intelligence, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." It took me a moment to understand what he was saying. "James, I'm just your assistant. You were never just anything, Rachel." His expression softened. "You're the daughter I never had, the person I trust most in this world, and the right choice to lead Hollander into its next chapter." "You want me to be CEO?" I asked, stunned. "I want you to be whatever you choose to be," James replied. "But yes, that's my recommendation to the board. They've already approved it, pending your acceptance." I was speechless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. "You don't have to decide now," he added gently. "Take some time to think about it." Later that evening, I sat alone in my apartment, turning over James's offer in my mind. The leather portfolio lay open on my coffee table, now containing notes for Hollander's future that I had been compiling during James's recovery. My phone rang. "Samuel, have you decided?" he asked without preamble. "I'm still processing," I admitted. "It's a huge responsibility." "One you're uniquely qualified for," he countered. "James sees it. Doris sees it. I see it. The only person who doesn't seem to see it is you." I smiled despite myself. "When did you become my cheerleader, Samuel?" "When I watched you risk everything to uncover the truth and save a man you believed in." His voice grew serious. "The trial starts next week. It's going to be brutal. The company needs steady leadership to weather the storm. And you think that should be me? I know it should be you." After we hung up, I walked to my window, gazing out at the Nashville skyline. Hollander Tower stood illuminated against the night sky, a beacon of possibilities. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the note at the funeral that had started it all, the risks, the fears, the moments of despair, and through it all, the unwavering belief that the truth mattered, that it was worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. James had given me so much over the years: guidance, support, confidence when I had none. Perhaps it was time to give something back, to honor his legacy by building upon it. The next morning, I arrived at James's home, where he was continuing his recovery. He was in the garden, enjoying the autumn sunshine. "I've made, my decision," I said, sitting beside him. He nodded, waiting. "I'll do it," I said simply. "I'll become CEO of Hollander & Co." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I never doubted you would. But I have conditions," I continued. "You stay on as chairman of the board. We establish a whistleblower protection program for employees. And we create a foundation in your name focused on corporate ethics and transparency." "All excellent ideas," he agreed. "Anything else?" I hesitated, then said what was truly in my heart. "And we remember that business is about more than profit. It's about people. It's about doing the right thing, even when, especially when, it's difficult." James reached over and took my hand, his eyes shining with pride. "That, Rachel, is why you're the perfect person to lead Hollander into the future." 6 weeks later, I stood at a podium in Hollander's auditorium, addressing the company as its new CEO. The room was packed with employees, many of whom had weathered the storm of scandal and uncertainty. Hollander and Couriers was built on principles of integrity and service, I told them. For a time, we lost our way, but today we begin a new chapter. In the Mawayao, front row sat James, looking stronger with each passing day. Beside him were Samuel and Doris, my closest allies and now my executive team. The truth is not always comfortable, I continued, echoing words James had once spoken to me. It's not always convenient, but it is always, always worth fighting for. As applause filled the room, I thought about the note that had started this journey. 5 simple words that had changed everything. He didn't die. He's alive. The truth had been buried, but not forever. It had waited, patient and persistent, for someone to uncover it, to believe in it, to fight for it. And in that fight, I had discovered not just the truth about James and Hollander and Co., but about myself, my courage, my strength, my purpose. Some truths can be buried. Some voices can be silenced, but not forever. Not when someone refuses to walk away.